Um, but look, we talked about the playoffs. We can get into some of just the best rivalry games in football. Last week of the season, it's a huge rivalry week. There's
So much stuff's can happen.
yeah, there's plenty of rivalry weeks kind of throughout the year, sprinkled throughout, but this week is kind of the big one where a lot of the big rivalries are. Um, we could start off talking about probably the a game that we'll preview and a game that we've kind of talked about, Ohio State, Michigan. Probably it's the biggest
I
game
think
in
it's the
it's
biggest
the
game
biggest
for
game in
sure.
college football. Some people try to say it's not. I mean, look at the ratings. The ratings prove it all. Draws the most viewers. Um, and yeah, so that's it's pretty top of the top there. Everybody, there's other good great rivalry games, but that's definitely the biggest one. You can't talk about rivalries without the Iron Bowl with Alabama and
And
Auburn.
Auburn, yeah.
It's very similar to the Ohio State Michigan
Right.
game. Fierce rivals, you know.
We've seen Auburn pull off crazy upsets.
Hmm.
I mean, we could talk about the kicked field goal,
Yeah.
run back,
Yeah,
like
mhm.
and then obviously like Trey Mason just going off on them. And there's so many. That's the thing, like with these rivals, there's so much history behind it where it's kind of like, say, I don't know, say for example, Ohio State, they're undefeated now, and Michigan, maybe they're 5-3. There's instances where Michigan could come and beat Ohio State just
Right.
based off of the environment, just based off of
Hmm.
the feel of rivalry week. And that's why prior to the playoffs, this is like we've talked about it just a few minutes ago, just how crazy it can be. Whereas like so many things can happen, but what we expect is for them to win out or whatever the case is. There's really no like at this point. It's like
Yeah.
it's kind of up in
November
the air.
November's a free for all. And we could
Yeah,
see that by the last few weeks. We've had crazy upsets. I mean, look, college football is kind of like this in general.
right.
It's even more at this point because the teams are more there's more stress. There's more things going into these games when you've already come this far and you can see the end of the tunnel.
Right.
So it's like, can you not look ahead to that and stay focused on this opponent who you think is you should handle no problem, and that
Yeah.
you're focused on the big dogs up front that you're gonna have to get to after the season, or are you gonna look past them and these guys are gonna play hard against you and they're gonna take
And
it?
you play down to your
Yeah, and
competition
this is
and
even worse when it's specific rivalries where you know not just the teams but the whole fan base, the whole you go to these areas, the whole towns and cities are
yeah,
involved in
it's
this.
crazy.
And yeah, so it's tough. I mean, look, other rivalries we had Red River. Red River is always a big rivalry. Not as fun this year with Oklahoma and Texas being down, but it's one that we also get to continue to see as they both move to the SEC. The world's largest outdoor cocktail party between Georgia and Florida. This is a game that they hold in that neutral site there in Jacksonville. I know Kirby Smart has been pretty vocal about maybe not doing that anymore because of how huge that game is, and with the recruiting rules and stuff like that. It's they rather have it where it moves back and forth to the home stadium, so that way when it's your turn at home, you get to invite all the recruits there. It's a
Right.
huge weekend. But yeah, that's definitely a big one. Always happens earlier in the year. Army Navy, right? We forget sometimes about some of these smaller schools, but Army Navy, I mean, it might be almost as up there as Ohio State Michigan in terms of what it means to those
To those,
programs.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
just in general to that like that branch of military,
right.
like they take that serious.
Yes, that
So
that that's about as serious as you can get. I mean, you can't tell me that Army Navy is not as important as something like Red River. You know what I mean? So,
right,
huge game, even though they're not competing on for national titles, but they are still competing at a national level, which
right,
is probably helps the game itself because all across our country and even guys stationed overseas, big for them. It's probably a big weekend when the people we have in serving in other countries for us gets a we see sometimes like college basketball, they go and they
they,
play on a ship, and
yeah,
it's always fun
exactly.
for them and big for these guys. So yeah, definitely a lot going on there. And then we have some other ones, Miami, Florida State, lost kind of its luster as both programs are not where they used to be. But we know about the missed field goals in that game and the whole
The
history between the U and Florida State and Deion
right,
Sanders and so much going on there. That's a fun one that hopefully it seems like could have a shot at becoming one of the bigger games again, as Florida as a whole looks to be on the right track in terms of boosting its recruiting again.
right.
Yeah, and then we have some old ones like Alabama, Tennessee, which might be coming back now. It was a huge game this year, which was fun, and that used to be just as big as some of these other games, and hopefully that'll be another one that we get to see going forward and be a competitive game. Which look,
We've seen it this year.
yeah,
So I mean,
exactly.
I feel like it only trends upward, especially with what Sark done in Tennessee, and obviously Alabama is Alabama. So
Yeah, Josh Heupel in Tennessee, but
yeah,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
right, right. Josh Heupel.